All right, so today we're here with Mr. David Sword and on New Mexico Desert Classics. And one of the things, our first three videos were everything was just shooting a car. And cars are cool, but quite honestly, car people are cooler. So I'm going to get out from in front of the camera and get behind the camera. And I think it's really important, especially in today's day and age, that we capture stories from our early pioneers in the car industry. And I can tell you just from having hung out with Dave a couple of times that he's got some of the coolest car stories, some of the coolest war stories, some of the coolest life stories. And I think often in today's day and age we don't do enough to capture that and relay those stories. So Dave agreed to take an hour of his time out on a Saturday morning in probably his favorite place on the planet, in the shop, and so we're just gonna have a little bit of a chat. All right, so let's talk about the tin bug that's outside that I'm gonna grab some video of later. How many miles?
Well, I personally put 312,000 on it. When I bought it, it cost me, I don't remember exactly, around $600. The guy that I bought it from worked on the range out at Rhodes Canyon, which is completely on the other side of that range. And he drove it back and forth until he had a few $100,000 on it himself. When he retired, he parked it in his backyard, opened the doors, and let the dogs use it for a doghouse. So it was pretty nasty when I bought it, and they had chewed the interior to death. But I towed it home. Inside of half a day, I had it running. And I built that for my daughter. And it was a beautiful cow look. It was painted a metallic orange that came out on through their ZXs. Very pretty little car. And she could have gotten killed in it. That's back when there was a lot of bugs in Elmore. And where Indian Wells turns to 2 lanes in front of what used to be a 7-Eleven type deal. It just had to be the perfect storm that night. She's cruising down the road, this kid in a bug showing off, past her real fast. And as he got to the 2-lane part, there was a guy turning left into the parking lot. He hit that guy head on. And my daughter had no place to go except into all of them. And she stuck her head through the windshield. So I ended up buying it back from the insurance company for $300. And I rebuilt it again for her. And she was going to college, taking nursing in Las Cruces, and she didn't know how to downshift at the proper time, so she lugged that poor thing up and down over that pass. And when she came home, she says, "It's making a funny noise. There must have been a ½ inch of end play in the crank." So I basically pulled it out, threw it in the dumpster. There was nothing left in it, and put a brand new engine in it. And I rebuilt the front end for her and got it all squared away. And she took it to Santa Fe for a nursing exam. And a guy in a road truck, highway department truck, at the gas station, I guess he thought he had the thing in low and he had it in reverse, and he backed all the way to where he busted the windshield out. Caved the windshield posts in again, and luckily she had just shut the hood and got out from, or else he would have run over her. So I took it away from her, and I bought her a Suzuki Samurai. which is still running around on a base, by the way.
Silver one.
Silver one, jacked up.
Yep.
Yeah. I had a Grand Sport engine in that for a while.
Wow.
It's sitting in my box on First Street. But I sold that to a real good buddy of mine. And it'll probably be around here forever. But then I started driving that thing after I took it away from her, and I drove it. At the time, I lived 25 miles from my shop exactly. And I lived up in Cottonwood Canyon. And I drove it almost every day for close to 20 years. It's just, and finally one day the clutch didn't work no more. And I thought it was a cable, so I changed to cable. Turns out that it was the throwout bearing had fallen off of the fork, because one of the forks disconnected from the shaft. So I ended up pulling the car in the garage and tearing it all apart, and I discovered that nobody had ever ridden on the other side, so who looks over there? I made the mistake of putting my knees on the heater channel and fell through it. Because water had been coming in the door and running into the heater boxes, so I ended up, that car sitting up there all rusty looking, it's got brand new heater boxes. But it's got, if I live long enough, there's plans for it.
Outstanding.
It's going to be the only diesel Beetle floating around town.
Nice. All right, so we're gonna put a bow on this. I just really want to let you know how much I appreciate everything you've done and the time this morning just to capture it. I'd like to come back and do this some more. And I was talking to my wife this morning when I told her what I was coming to do, and you know the technology that we have, you know, we talked about this little GoPro here earlier.
Yes.
The technology that we have available today lets us do things that when my grandparents were alive, I would have loved to just sit and talk to my granddad and just capture all of those those stories that, you know, his sons, my dad and his three brothers, they grew up with those stories. I grew up with some of them, but just to capture and document when life was different, right? And not that it bugs me when we act like life today isn't good, because life today is great. There's lots of things that we get to do, like, you know, putting fuel injection on a car that came with a 34 PICT Solex on it, and just building what you want to build. And you know, back in the early hot rod days, everything was done out of necessity, right? If you wanted to go, you know, take your second first car, you know, if you wanted to be able to do anything, it was necessity that drove you to have to build and be creative. But today, life is to the point where we get to do these things because we want to. So I'm excited to see what you're gonna, you know, can't wait to maybe come out and capture the weight shift airplane. I think that'd be really cool. One of these days, I just really want to come back and capture more stories and document them and save them. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you for the time this morning. Thank you for everything you've done for our country, and even as odd as it sounds, for the car culture. You know, in this area, I'm going to find a way to introduce it at the beginning of the video. But I mean, you're a living car legend here. So
I've got some other stories.
Yeah, I know you do. And we'll have to set up a time to capture them, and maybe we can get the thing cleaned up and
Yeah.
take it out for a cruise.
Yeah, I'd like to. It needs to be driven.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, we'll put a bow on it for today, and just say again for another day.
Which my buddy, a buddy of mine and I, we'd scrape up what little bit of money we had, and that would pay one guy in. And one of us would, each weekend would ride in the trunk of the car. And then he'd either yell at me or I'd yell at him, okay, it's safe, and he'd jump out of the trunk. And then we knew everybody in the pits, so we'd all end up with a pit pass pretty easy. And I ended up crewing for Tommy Ivo. I don't know if you remember who Tommy Ivo was. TV Tommy Ivo.
Okay.
Well, look him up. Look him
Will
up.
do.
He was quite famous. In fact, he's still alive, and I got his email in my pocket.
Nice.
But also, I don't know if you ever heard of Walter Arfins.
No?
Art and Walter Arfins. They used to run a dragster called the Green Monster.
Okay.
Well, one night, Dennis, I call him Dennis, but his name was Russell Dennis. And I used to call him Dennis. And he and I were at the drags, and we met Art Arfins. And he says, school was just out. He says, and he was all by himself, hitting every drag strip in California. And he asked us, this was back when you could do this and not expect to end up in some cornfield dead. He says, how'd you boys like to go on tour with me? I'll pay for everything. So all we had to do was ask our parents. Well, he just loaded up the Green Monster, which my dad had heard of, and he brings it to my house. He says, I'd like to borrow your son. How long? Oh, probably all summer. And that was a wonderful summer. We hit every drag strip that I can even imagine in California. And then he brought us home because we were his pit crew.
No kidding.
And that was a lot of fun. And we got to see some of the wildest dragsters in the world. And it was very memorable.
Nice. That was back when drag racing was about what you could do, not what you could buy.
Yeah, you're talking 1958.
Wow.
58 and 59. So it was quite a ways back there. Mickey Thompson was the manager of our strip, and this was before he got famous. He did get famous while he was at Lions because he built that 4-engine Pontiac powered car that went 400 miles an hour. But I don't know, got to meet a lot of people. Like you've heard of Stone, Woods, and Cook.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I knew them very well. And and Don Perdome. Don Perdome was just a punk kid that came with Tommy Ivo. And Tommy gave him his first car. Set him up in his first car.
Wow.
And he went on to become the Snake. And the reason they called him the Snake is he couldn't trust him. He turned out to be not a very nice guy.